some reflections that colleagues would want to give as a parting shot before we get into the process forward, that we'd like to speak to you about quickly? I just want to check if there's anything you think is of critical importance that we maybe didn't look at, we didn't cover, we didn't think about, that you think is important for us to take into consideration, especially in the context of the development of the Code of Good Practice. Sure. Oh, okay. All right. Okay. Is it a state of the nation? Okay. Okay. All right. Clement, let's start with you.
Okay, Clement Mepudi from G4CA. Me, I just want to just make it's a comment anyway. It's not a transmesh. It's can we please South Africans? I'm requesting all South Africans to let's consider Chapter 2 policy alignment and institutional arrangement in Climate Change Act 22 of 2024. It says alignment of policies. Every organ of states that exercise a power or performs a function that is affected by climate change or is entrusted with powers and duties aimed at achievement, promotion, and protection of a sustainable environment must review and if necessary, we must revise, we must amend, we must coordinate and harmonize our policies. It's what we're talking about, our laws. We must coordinate, we must check again our measures and our programs and our decisions so that we make sure that the risk of climate change doesn't affect those who are already affected and even those the future tense. Please, let's consider Chapter 2. Let's change the rules because we are still using the law of 1934 even now. But now we are doing a just transition. But the date on the acts, they say 1978. Let's change everything. I think Netlec got a capacity to do that. Even PCC from this year, I think they're going to have that impartial power to implement these things. Because even now, I'm said DFFE is not here, but they've submitted our NTC. They were supposed to bring back the report back to the community, to the country, to the grassroots that we have lay our environmental plans. Let's deal with our environmental plans and policies. Thanks.
Thank you very much for that, Clement. I'm going to come to you and then I'm going to come to you as well.
I'd first like to highlight and also just thank Abuti Clement. I think you are doing civil society such a great justice in advocating for them. We need more people like you who are able to cut across the BS and actually highlight what the people on the ground are actually saying and what they are actually feeling. And also the language, also the phrasing that he uses, you can also feel it that he speaks from the depth of his soul and the depth of the people on the ground. So for that, I give you your flowers. I'm going to introduce myself again. My name is Tshegofatso Ngumalo. I don't think I represented my organization fairly in how I introduced it. And if my boss sees my first video, she's probably not going to be happy. So the Pan-African Collective for Evidence, I work there as a research intern, working under the Just Transition Project right now with the JPMU. I work under the Innovation and Equity Directorate, where we focus on gender work, we focus on just energy transition, climate change, which I cut across that. Under the Innovation and Equity Directorate, we focus on an evidence synthesis and evidence-informed policymaking to support context-specific development pathways across Africa. We work with different African countries like Kenya, Cameroon, Mozambique, and just like different southern and eastern based African countries. And the question I have on the code of good conduct I had drafted actually is that the presentation outlines important instruments to guide just transition processes, including a code of good conduct, collective bargaining mechanisms under the Labor Relation Act, and negotiated interventions such as job matching, skills development, income support, social protection, and enterprise support are highlighted, and they're great. However, what does existing evidence synthesis tell us? And I'm always going to highlight evidence synthesis because that's the work that we do. And we go to many of these things and we realize that there's no living evidence map, and that's the work that we do. So how can we best come and guide you guys across this, right? What does existing evidence synthesis tell us about which of these instruments are most effective in practice, particularly in context of high informality and unemployment, and how will this evidence be used to prioritize, sequence, and enforce these interventions to ensure that they deliver meaningful protection and mobility for workers during the transition? So that's the question I had.
So we had moved beyond questions. We wanted like
Oh, you want
statements. But
I'm so sorry.
I hear you, and I get you, because it also goes back to the initial frustration. What is the point of today's discussion? What is it supposed to be driving, and how is it going to be practically implemented? And you want to see the evidence. I too want to see that. Hence, we are here. The reason, and I mean, Lisa did cover this in her response to you earlier, around how effective actually code of good practices have been. They've really been effective, especially at a labor market point of view. But we do acknowledge the fact that from this conversation, we're going beyond the labor market. We are looking at other interventions that help support what we're trying to achieve as part of the just transition. Because when I did my presentation, I showed that the pillars of the just transition, labor market is just but one, and there are many pillars that are working continuously for us to achieve the just transition. Maybe let me say this, Sofa. So this is not the last conversation that we're going to have. This was an initial sort of scene-setting discussion for society more broadly to know that this is something that we think is important as a next step to practically realizing the just transition in a manner that is fair and in a manner that is just. So I will speak now in terms of other processes that we are going to follow as part of this development of a code of good practice. And what we can then start to do in those conversations, unpack that much needed evidence that you'd like to see, because we didn't even get into the conversation around what policy tools have worked better in other geographies that we could probably look at making use of that could potentially help us to achieve this just transition. So we may not answer your question here today, but this is a process. And like Lisa said, sometimes the process is the important thing that you need to focus on, because that determines whether the outcome is just or not. I know I've not answered your question, but am I able to answer it without having followed a complete process and given a complete picture of what this animal actually really looks like? Can I give you an opportunity to raise a question?
Thank you.
I
Hello.
also do want us to get into the way forward, but please do.
My name is Mudiema Fantire. I'm a junior researcher, climate finance from the Institute of Economic Justice. I really wanted to speak more about, the social protection elements of this discussion here today. I mean, I think it's really great that, Lewang, you prefaced the discussion by making sure that everybody understands that the just transition is really a borrowed concept from the labor constituency, right? Because that's something that often goes misunderstood, if not swept under the rug. And so when there's pushback against grants or cash transfers, it worries me because that is contradictory to what labor stands for, on the basis of support for workers in a transition, which is where the concept initially started. So I'd just like us to start thinking about social protection more broadly as people in the room, not necessarily from the presenters, because I think I got a strong sense of the holistic understanding of social protection. So not just the cash transfers, but also ensuring that there's employment, right? I mean, that's a key part of social protection, but let's not, maybe mistake one for the other. Social protection is a very broad concept. And there's actually nothing wrong with the universal basic income. I have to say this as well, though, because I work at the IEJ and that's what we're pushing. But it's important that everybody understands that people need to be supported in the transition, especially the unseen people, right? The ones who are left wondering what they're going to do with their lives after we see the announcement on TV that this station is closing and that station is closing. Those are the people that we need to make sure are supported. And with the point raised, I think it was Abuti Clement who talked about how the implementation plan comes to an end in 2027. And I think we've seen even 50% of the funds spent, but anybody from the PMU, if they're around, they can correct me. There's an opportunity there, right? About where to direct those funds, since we really haven't really tapped into the depth of the money that I believe is actually there. Yes, okay. And Sir from the biogas industry, I did appreciate your inputs about where we need to strengthen, employment opportunities, but a cash transfer does not actually cause dependency. I mean, there are studies for and against this.
Sure.
We can go back and forth, but
Sure.
in the just in the consideration of time,
Sure.
I'll stop there. Thank you.
Thank you. Are your bosses watching these meetings?
Well, they might.
Something's going on here. There was a hand at the back. Is there anybody on this side? Okay. Looking at time. Okay, we're gonna take. I'm going to go to lady over here, and then after that it'll be 1, 2, and then we'll end off with Memakom.
Okay. Hi, everyone. My name is Ntombizodwa Alicia Ranyadi. I'm based in Soweto at Deep Kloof. I didn't want to say anything, but this issue of ageism, it's making me, just want to jump out of my skin most of the time. I think Gordon has said a mouthful that we shouldn't create a country which is a beggar's country, honestly. And I think in these terms of just transition policy, the way it should be designed, I think we've said no one should be left behind. So everybody needs to be on board, not for those who are in labor only, because even if we are civil society, but kakhulu ngathi we dwell on much in terms of abantu abasebenzayo, you understand, and what about abantu abangasebenzi? And no, Lisa, in her presentation, when she talked about the reskilling, and then when I say ageism, when she said, around, let me say 18 to 50, to be reskilled in terms of the work or whatever. So my question will be, the people who are 51 to 60, what will happen to them? Even if, okay, maybe others might want to take an early pensioner, others might like to continue working because you end up being umuntu onakekela ikhaya, you understand, as ulona umama, and as umama I'm about 50 something, and I don't want my kids to work for me. I'm pushing my kids to go to school so that they can fend for themselves, not for them because I'm a mom who's staying at home and then they have to work for me, because I will end up demanding that you have to give me so much and so much. So I think if everybody needs to be on board, we mean everybody. Now what I've realized now most of the time is that where there's money, people tend to run to. Honestly, most of the people in agriculture, they didn't like it because they don't want to dirty their hands because of many chores and whatever and whatever. We understand. And in the schools, at churches, whatever, the people who are doing agriculture at schools, it's us. And the government tried to come up with this thing here, EPPP, whatever, where they were giving youth something like a 3.5 a month, né? And they'll be taken. They will be sent to schools to come and work. I had a project at school where you know where I had the every you know yet life tried to erect a sustainable energy thing. You know, they will come there. They will work for a period of 2 years, which is 24 months. And then when the APPP money is finished, they are finished. You know, you'll teach them. Mind you, I come there every day and I don't even get any pain. But because they are there, I'm supposed to work with them. You understand? And I'm above 50 something. So which means who's fooling who? We are there as elderly to go and work for the youth. And then for them to get money. And when the money is finished, and then they run. So please, you know, when we do this policy or whatever, think about us, at least 18 up to 60.
Yeah.
Because grant it's all about 60 years.
Sure.
So don't talk for us. I see, and you understand? We are here. We want to be on board. We want to be like others. We want to work for ourselves.
Sure.
So please include us everything. This ageism thing, I think it must come to an end, because we are going to always argue because of age, and then you know all those things. So everybody, the Just Transition says everyone must be on board. So can we do that? Thank you.
Yes. And I agree with that. Remember, we said interventions are going to be country specific and context specific. The example that Lisa was making reference to was a study done by Harun Borat. But even in this conversation, we can still make reference to what we feel is things that must speak to a particular context. We are running out of time, so I'm going to ask that the last three speakers do make it very brief, because I do want to get into the way forward and give people a chance to leave on time. We can start, Lebo.
Thank you, Chair. In the interest of being brief, I want to echo what this lady has just said and just go back to the idea of creating social capital. So yes, this discussion has focused on labor, in my view. What we want to know in terms of a way forward is how you're going to create social capital, because we talk about social capital in communities. It will include Abu Mama above 50 something. Thank you.
Sure. Thanks. Tate Lawrence.
No, thanks, Commission. I think our input is that you could see the involvement of how we've managed to include other people. If you see at the community constituency, that we've got a number of people that work with, and we're still working with them as well. But you will also take into consideration the managed inclusive of cooperative movement that has got a number of people, there's got a number of places, and then some of the people, as you check, they're represented at the broader structure. But it's important that maybe in some of the meeting, as we move on, it is important that we also expand the country as well, because it's a broad movement. But what you could see under the community constituency, that we represent them as principals, and they are there and they're participating. I think that's most welcome. Thanks, Chair.
Sure. Thank you very much. Mema Koma.
Thank you, Chairperson. I just wanted to check with what Dr. Ruth has presented as a social protection. Does that link to the Just Energy Transition Investment Plan? And also, how does that link to the Climate Change Response Fund? Thanks.
So the simple answer is no. No. And why we brought in Dr. Ruth for this discussion is because we want to have her type of thinking to start being an integral part of the processes moving forward. I would like to wrap us up. Lisa, do you want to do a quick update in terms of where we are with the development of the actual code and the key sort of like practical guidance? And then I'll go into broader process in terms of the page program.
Okay.
No, things have to change after today's discussion.
Okay, no, thanks a lot, and thanks to everybody here for the comments and perspectives and passion that they've shown about these issues. I think Lebo just at the beginning that there's a number of other roundtables with the other constituencies, after which we will review our approach and present it back to the ILO page. And once they've given us the go-ahead, we will draft 1 or 2 documents or ever many. And we may explore some of the issues that I think Paul raised and Jens raised when we come back with a proposal. We think it'll probably take us about 3 or 4 weeks to then draft a document. And my understanding is that, between the PCC will see in what forum and how that document will be taken forward. But definitely, there is an understanding that this has to be an inclusive kind of process. Thanks.
Sure, thanks for that, Lisa. So really the idea is that when we're done with this, there's a development of a forum. It would be ideal for it to be in NADLEC because NADLEC does have, each constituency does have representation there, and because of the protocols of NADLEC that do allow us to finalize these types of documents and make them binding. But before we finalize on either the code or the practical guidance, we do want to have a broader consultation with communities in affected areas. So not having a conversation in Rosebank with community constituency, but to take a code that's already been discussed to communities to see how they feel about it, and then to come back and report back to the forum that will be discussing the code as well as the other relevant practical guidance. But as you saw, Renee, who was here, there are tools that are being developed that also we will rely on you to take them back to your constituency on how to engage and negotiate on these issues and how to prioritize various interventions. So as Lisa had explained, not everything is going to make it into the code. Other things are going to be practical guidance. And the practical guidance, it will be up to the various social partners to then take that practical guidance into relevant forums so that they can then form part of another process that either culminates best case scenario in particular regulations that guide this process. Because as we've seen from this conversation, a code of good practice alone is not sufficient to address the issues that we've raised here as pertinent and burning issues as we try and practically implement the just transition. I would like to, having said that, I would like to firstly thank you all for being here today for the whole session in an era where virtual meetings have taken over our lives. It's very rare that people want to sit the whole day in a physical setting. It means that this matter is really important to you. And we really appreciate that. As far as possible, we will send out presentations if your email address is legibly enough on the register. We do want to send you the presentations that were shared here today, but please do keep engaging with the various PCC social media pages for us to keep letting you know how this process is going. At some point, we may ask to reconvene with yourselves to report on progress, how far we've gone. And if we need to pivot, we could always reconvene and have those conversations. There are things we didn't answer, like the question around social capital. The door is not closed. If there are things that we should be thinking about that are pertinent to this process, the email address that you use to come to this meeting, send us an email and we will as far as possible try to factor it there. And then the colleagues that are represented in NADLEC as far as possible should be getting more regular updates on the process that we are unfolding with this development of the Code of Good Practice and the supplementary practical guidance. So with that said, I'd like to thank the AV team that's worked really hard here today. I'd like to thank Lisa and Paul today, the ILO team for the immense support getting this together, the admin team for helping us get everyone here today and sorting out the logistics, and to yourselves and the team online. Thank you for participating and staying engaged and really giving us robust engagement. You've caused us to think about things a bit differently. Thank you very much, colleagues.
And thanks to Lebo for great facilitation and chairpersonship.